David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the program. Voting is happening now, and it's happening early in record numbers. We've talked about it on the bonus show. We are going to do a deeper dive into these early votes next week. But I want to talk about voter fraud for a moment. I'm sure you know, if you've been watching the show or paying attention to either left or right wing media, because frankly, it's been a story on both, although with different angles. Republicans have been going on and on and on about in-person voter fraud for years. And almost every actual case of in-person voter fraud has been Republicans. We had the situation out of North Carolina. We've had Republicans supposedly trying to test the system and getting caught committing voter fraud. That's in person. We now have a QAnon-aligned mail carrier caught for allegedly hoarding and throwing out bags of mail. Donald Trump claims that the Postal Service can't handle mail-in ballots, but of course it can. And then in comes a pro-Trump QAnon mail carrier and gets caught allegedly making the mail not work. Special agents reportedly raided the home of a mail carrier in Baldwin, Pennsylvania over the weekend, because they got a tip from neighbors that there were bags full of undelivered mail being thrown into the trash. And according to the Pittsburgh City paper, that individual is Sean Troche. His social media profiles are filled with all sorts of extreme right-wing QAnon-related references to satanic pedophile memes, which allege that the media is covering up child sex trafficking. It relates to Pizzagate and all sorts of other nonsense. Also, his social media profiles refer to the tyranny of coronavirus quarantines and lockdowns. And as we know, that perception of tyrannical quarantines recently led to a plot to kidnap the Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. So this stuff has real consequences. According to KDKA, neighbors reported that Postal Service agents raided the home of this mail carrier and confiscated 8 large garbage bags of suspected undelivered mail that this mail carrier reportedly put on the curb to be picked up with the week's garbage. A statement from the USPS Office of the Inspector General says that, quote, special agents recovered several different classes of mail, including business mail, flats, and small amount of first-class mail. We expect to perform a piece count of the mail tomorrow and make arrangements to have the mail delivered to customers as soon as feasible. Now, importantly, I guess, no particular mention of whether there were absentee ballots in the mail one way or the other, although they may not identify the absentee ballots by any in any way other than by the class of mail that they represent. We just don't know whether there are absentee ballots found in the bags of trash. Neighbors believe that Troche has trashed undelivered mail in the past. No charges have as of yet been filed. And this is mirroring the entire in-person voter fraud ruse perfectly. Republicans have been complaining about in-person voter fraud and rigged elections through mail-in ballots this year. And you've got a QAnon guy caught allegedly hoarding and dumping mail, much like they've been talking about the in-person voter fraud for a long time. And almost everybody who gets caught is a right winger. And then you've got Trump's postmaster putting in place orders and guidelines to prevent the timely delivery of mail across the country. We've seen California Republicans deploy these fake decoy ballot boxes. We've seen Republican governors and secretaries of state blocking early voting, purging voter rolls. It's them. We even saw after the 2016 election, Republicans in the Senate, including the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, not even bringing to the floor for debate bills to deal specifically with election interference, including from foreign countries, but even domestic interference as well, and on and on and on. So almost without exception, the rigging and the tampering with absentee voting has been from people on the right. It is projection. It's undeniable. Yes, it's stunning, but at this point, is it even really surprising? And what do Republican senators think about this guy caught hoarding and trashing mail? This is the real election fraud, and it should be prosecuted. They seem to have made the decision. Maybe they made it implicitly. It doesn't have to be an explicit decision where they sit around and they say, if we don't do this stuff, we will lose. But they seem to have recognized that they have a much better shot at winning. And maybe their only shot at winning is if they try to cheat. And it's not just the right screaming mail fraud when there isn't any. It's the right screaming mail fraud when they are the ones doing the mail fraud. Of course, this instance, as far as we know, was not coordinated by the Republican Party. But again, what they tell us we need to be worried about because of the left, we really have to be worried about it because of the right. That's the reality. And we will continue to track whether charges are filed. And of course, they should be, and whether there are more instances of this. Hey, this is super interesting. Republican Governor Charlie Baker from Massachusetts, our governor, has announced that he cannot support Donald Trump for president and will not be voting for Donald Trump. Now, I've mentioned before that Massachusetts has this habit of electing sort of moderate Republican governors. Bill Weld is an example. Mitt Romney, not really a moderate, but in the modern Republican Party, certainly less extreme than many other Republicans. And despite being a very blue state with a very left-wing state legislature, these sort of more moderate Republicans are frequently elected governors of Massachusetts. We've also reported that Charlie Baker is a Republican governor who has dealt pretty well with coronavirus. I think now things are starting to get a little out of hand. I think indoor dining needs to be shut down and quick because we are back up to 600-700 cases a day after being down to, 150 and the like. But overall, Charlie Baker has done pretty well with the virus. Back when Donald Trump wanted state National Guard troops sent down to guard the border, Charlie Baker said, I'm not doing it. Well, the latest news is that Charlie Baker is abandoning the Republican Party this November, at least nationally, and not supporting Donald Trump, putting out a statement a couple days ago through his communications director, which said, quote, the governor cannot support Donald Trump for president and is focused on seeing Massachusetts through the pandemic. He'll leave the election analysis to the pundits. Now, we already knew Baker didn't vote for Trump back in 2016. He voted a blank ballot on the presidency. So this could be a few different things. This could be that Charlie Baker, understanding that he's potentially on the ballot for re-election in a couple years, having one of the highest approval ratings of any governor on coronavirus as a Republican in a blue state, why would he do something that could torpedo him? But would it really torpedo him? I don't know. Massachusetts is a very blue state. But 32% of Massachusetts voters did vote for Trump in 2016. Now, it's important to understand a lot of those Massachusetts Republican voters are very different than Louisiana Republican voters, South Carolina Republican voters. But still, it's not clear that supporting Trump would torpedo Charlie Baker's shot at re-election. It wouldn't help, but it's not clear it would torpedo it. So it could really be a personal moral objection to Donald Trump and less about calculated politics. But either way, it's very interesting because it is not common that Republican governors don't support the Republican candidate for president. It's equally uncommon that Democratic governors wouldn't support the Democratic candidate for president. But you can really see it in a couple different ways. Now, the other thing I think is important to mention here is that these Republican governors like Charlie Baker are often seen as weird by Republicans in other parts of the country. There's a really interesting reality we have to come to terms with, which is that Charlie Baker really represents what Republicans used to be in the 60s and 70s. I would argue that the Republicans that are the weird ones are the ones that abandoned the school of thought of people like, William F. Buckley, for example, and now have turned into these sycophantic Lindsey Graham, Joni Ernst types. They are really the wacky ones. Bill Weld, another example of a Republican Massachusetts governor who's really a right-leaning libertarian, as an example. And similarly, if you look at the Republican governors as well as the Republican electorates in a lot of these other states, you see dramatically different things. And it does reflect the Republicans in the state. Brooklyn, it happens on the Democratic side as well. Brooklyn Democrats and South Carolina Democrats are very different. There's no question about that. And much the same way, rural Pennsylvania Republicans and Boston suburb Republicans are very different. One Republican governor at minimum is abandoning Donald Trump. We will see if anybody else does. In any case, I would expect a Donald Trump tweet or attack of some kind on Charlie Baker, calling him a rhino, a Republican in name only. Maybe he's already referred to Charlie Baker that way, and I just don't remember. But doing the right thing. I like that Charlie Baker is doing this. We have a fantastic program for you today. Later on in the show, we are going to talk about what should happen with the Electoral College, what can change the presidential race at this late stage, and very importantly, will the voter turnout explosion actually happen this year? We're seeing way more early voting than we've ever seen before, but we are in a pandemic where early voting has been encouraged like it's never been encouraged before. Every party, every election likes to say we have enthusiasm and we are going to win on record turnout this year. Is it actually going to happen? All of those and your calls will be discussed later on in the program. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at @dpacman, and we will take a quick break and be back right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, the best way to support the David Pakman Show is to grab a membership at joinpakman.com. It's quick, it's easy, it feels good, and it's really, really cheap, particularly if you use the coupon code 2020NOW. You'll save 66%. Let's hear from some viewers and listeners. We are going to take some calls via the David Pakman Show Discord, davidpakman.com/Discord. That's DISCORD. There are so many people very, very interested in getting on, and it's hard to know where to start even. But I think today we are going to first start with J.A. from Long Beach. J.A. from Long Beach. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, David?
Yeah, what's going on, J.A.?
Oh, gosh. This is my second time calling. I pretty much, my first call was about, Bernie and his, what were his chances of winning? That's what I asked you before.
Right. That was a while ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago. And now, I didn't think about a question. So I was just going to say, I really like your show. I really like it. It's been a while. I remember like 2 to 3 years ago. That's when I heard it, and it was you pretty much helped me understand things about politics, how they work, and all that. So I'm just thanking you for that.
Beautiful.
Sorry, I'm kind of nervous.
You're doing great, J.A. Thank you for the kind words. We love it. And it is, of course, very, very much appreciated. Let's go next to Rob from Massachusetts. Rob from Massachusetts, what's going on today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well.
I just want to say I've been watching your program for, I think, 5-6 months. I think I first found out about you through Fantano.
Beautiful.
And, yeah. Are you familiar with Burlington by any chance?
Burlington, Mass. Or Vermont?
Burlington, Mass.
I've been in Burlington, Mass. once.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
All right, so let me just get to my question. I just want to break the ice a little bit.
Oh, all right. I didn't know if the question was related to Burlington. I was answering it as if it was material.
Yeah, yeah. I should have got to the question. So my question for you is, I've kind of been raised to kind of think that Democrats are bad based on like my family's beliefs.
Okay.
And as I've gotten older, I've noticed that my own siblings have kind of grown a lot more aware of how vastly different we kind of think in political beliefs. So my question for you is, how do you kind of stem away from what families have taught you in politics and just be confident with the decisions you make in politics?
This is a very, very important question because there's certainly no question that people are more likely to hold the political beliefs that line up with their parents as a general rule. And of course, there's people that abandon left-wing parents and become right-wing, and there's people that abandon right-wing parents and become left-wing. I think the important thing to do is to separate it from being, a lot of times political and also religious beliefs are sort of considered sacred and different than any other kind of belief. So there's not much stigma or shame or concern typically if your parents grew up liking American cars and you think Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, they're not that great. I really prefer German vehicles or something like that. And I think what's important is if you feel confident in that, understand that coming to different conclusions about religion or politics, if it's based on facts and empiricism, really is no different. Now, it's easier said than done because it's much more likely that your family is going to judge you if you have different political beliefs than they do. Whereas if you have a different opinion about which airline to fly or what foods taste good or what cars to buy, it's unlikely to create the same type of rift. But if the question is how to feel confident in your beliefs, I think it's the destigmatizing of political and religious beliefs so that you might just look at the facts in a different way. You might look at facts your parents didn't look at and come to different conclusions, and that is okay. And then the second piece that's tougher is figuring out, if and how it affects your relationship with them. And that's tougher to do.
No, yeah, I feel like it might get a little bit difficult, like as in the scenario wherein I eventually move out, assuming that things pick up once COVID clears up, which is hopefully soon.
We all hope it will be soon, and we all hope it will happen. And, it could be a little while, but hopefully not too long, Rob.
No, definitely. Thank you again for taking my question. I'm glad that you're staying strong through all this, and congrats on the million subscriber milestone. That's a huge. I know that's like a huge milestone for a lot of people, but I'm happy out of all the political commentators on YouTube, I'm glad that you've made it this far. So congrats on that, man.
Thank you. And almost now at 1.1 million subscribers. Very, very excited. I would love to get to 1.1, honestly, by election day. I don't know that that's going to happen. But anyway, we will continue trying and we will see. Let's see who else wants to get on today. Why don't we go to... there's just so many people. Let's go to Casey from Oklahoma City. Casey from Oklahoma City. What's going on? Casey, I know you're unmuted because I heard a gonk in the background, but you were on. Casey from Oklahoma City.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I sort of can.
Sorry, I'm in our office. Got to get the mask on. Walk down the hall. So my question is kind of a hypothetical, and then your opinion on the matter. I generally feel like both parties should not hack the court. This is the conversation that's happening right now with Barrett. And, I kind of feel like the Democrats could say, yeah, we're going to attack the court with two. We're just going to even the nomination you made, and then we're going to add one more for the one that we wanted. But I still don't think it's the right thing to do. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it.
Casey, are you using power tools while you talk to me?
I am in a manufacturing plant.
So they are literally power tools. Okay, that's good. I'm glad I'm not going crazy. So listen, here's the thing. I don't think Joe Biden wants to pack the court. I think Joe Biden has actually been pretty clear in the past that it's not something he wants to do. I don't think Joe Biden is going to do it. So while I understand the criticism that he's not being upfront about whether he would or wouldn't, your idea of adding two, I just don't think it's something Joe Biden wants to do. And he's trying to keep the threat of packing the court to have some leverage. I don't know that it's working. Barrett could be confirmed before we know it. But your idea is an interesting one. I just don't think Joe Biden has any interest in it.
Well, and I don't think I don't think we should. I mean, I like the idea that the courts are independent, but I don't know how they also can be, as we're all humans. So, I mean, you also are picking judges based on their opinions on things, like the ACA.
Of course.
So it's a weird argument because they say, well, it shouldn't be political, but you're obviously rushing this through before they to, see the case on November 10th, I think it is.
Yeah, if judges merely interpreted the law in a robotic way and spat out a response, you would have robots do it. You wouldn't put people in there. And you're correctly pointing out that, of course, their politics matter. There's no question about it. And, playing these games that they play during confirmation hearings about, no, I would simply look at the law and come out with the right answer. I'm just I just reflect what the law is. I don't come up with anything. Of course, that's not the way it works.
Right, but that was on top of mine. Appreciate the taking the call, and wish you the best.
All right, Casey, I'll let you get back to the manufacturing there. I very, very much appreciate it. Let's go next to, who else do we want to go to? How about, who was on? Let's go to Shonda from Toronto. Shonda, what's going on?
Hi, this is actually Shonda from Toronto, Ohio.
Okay, I assumed it was Canada, but it's not.
No, I realized that after I put it in. I thought, maybe I should.
No problem. It's still allowed.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to kind of talk about the stimulus package.
Sure.
A situation. So I live in a rural community in Ohio. A lot of people are laid off. I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about the gas and oil industry, but it's big here. And that industry is just dead here right now.
Yeah.
So people are really struggling. And it just is so disheartening to hear that, maybe it's a possibility, no stimulus package until February. What do you think about that? Is that what's going to happen?
It is completely plausible. Yeah, earlier in the week, we reviewed Nancy Pelosi's interview with Wolf Blitzer, where she lost her temper with Wolf and started attacking him. And really, she's right to be frustrated, but the frustration shouldn't be with Wolf's questions. It should be with Republicans and Trump, because you would think, well, listen, if Trump really is willing to do 1.8 trillion, why not take it? And Nancy Pelosi's argument is it doesn't actually really deal with XYZ. The counter would be, well, get the 1.8 trillion to people now before the Senate goes on vacation. Then we have an election. Then we've got until January inauguration, and it could be February. But I do think that it is completely plausible that there will be no more stimulus money until February, if at all. If by February if unemployment ticks down another couple points by February, and the vaccine starts being distributed, there may be no more stimulus money. That's also a possibility.
Yeah, I thought that too, because if it takes too long, maybe they won't care about it so much in February. Maybe they'll be on to a new thing. So,
I mean, listen,
thank you so much.
Would be amazing if you didn't need a stimulus in February, but people are going to be so upside down on, credit card payments and housing payments and everything by then that I think it's unlikely that it wouldn't be necessary.
Yeah, we live kind of close to West Virginia, and they like half the people there can't afford their rent.
Right. It's bad. It's very bad, Shonda.
Because again, the gas and oil industry is big there.
Yes.
And everybody's all happy, low gas prices and everything else. Well.
Yeah, I mean, low gas prices when there's nowhere to go don't do that much for you. Low gas prices when the car's been repossessed don't do that much for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what my thought is on it.
Yeah.
And it's rough. And people say, well, just go get a job. Well, it's kind of hard to do that when you don't have any place to apply.
It is indeed. Shonda, thank you so much. I appreciate hearing from you. We are going to go to a quick break. If you're holding, don't hang up, because we're going to the break is going to feel like nothing to the people on hold, and we'll be right back on and take more of your calls.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Let's hear from a few more people on the David Pakman Show Discord at davidpakman.com/Discord. That is DISCORD. Let me bring on our friend Pedro from Colombia. Pedro, ¿cómo estás hoy?
Hola, Mr. Pacman. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Hola, Mr. Pacman. It's been a long time, you know. I got the corona a few months ago, and then it was kind of sad. And then my wife, she left me for a little bit, but everything.
¿Cuál fue la fecha de contagio, Pedro?
Oh, era en julio. Era en julio.
So
I
you do
didn't like.
you actually do speak some Spanish, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, Mr. Pacman. I speak Spanish, but I try to speak English too.
Okay.
You know.
And
Wanna
what were your symptoms? ¿Cuáles eran tus síntomas?
Oh, my head hurt. I was like, oh no, I can't get up today.
¿Cuánta
And
fiebre? ¿Cuánta fiebre, Pedro?
oh, I don't know. It was like 100 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
didn't like it, but I feel better now, and my wife, she was gone, so she didn't get sick. It was just me and Pedrito.
Now, when you say your wife left you, she left you just temporarily while you had the COVID, or you're no longer with her?
Oh, she was like, Pedro, she just got mad at me, and she
But
fought me,
I'm trying to understand, she was mad you had the virus, or she was mad about something else?
Oh, she gets mad at me for a lot of things. That was one reason she got mad at me.
Right.
So
And remind me, where in Ecuador are you from?
No, I'm from Colombia.
Oh, from Colombia. Okay, very good.
Yeah, but I'm in Texas, and I'm looking forward to Biden winning Texas. My question for you is, do you think Biden has a chance in Texas?
Listen, I think he has a chance, and Joe Biden recently made the decision to start spending a bunch more money in Texas. He's also sending Kamala Harris down there. So I think it's close enough that Biden has determined it's worth making a play for it. If you say bet money, David, just even money, who wins Texas? I still think Trump wins Texas, but forcing Trump to have to defend it is a great thing.
Oh yes, I hope Biden wins. I hope Kamala Harris wins. She's kind of cute,
Right.
But I appreciate talking to you, Mr. Pacman. I love your Discord, and there's some very nice people there.
All right, Pedro and you're from El Capital, right? You told us?
No, Mr. Pacman. I just had a headache that day. I didn't remember where I'm from.
Where are you from in Colombia?
I have a headache now, and I don't remember where I'm from. But,
Was
I'll
it Guadalajara?
tell you
Where was it? Yeah. You'll tell me next time. Okay. All right. Pedro from Colombia is shot out of a cannon today. Let's go next to Nikki from Germany. Nikki from Germany. What's going on?
Hello, David.
Yes.
Can you listen? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, that's fine. First, I want to thank you for all the live streaming you do.
My pleasure.
Yes, it's amazing what's happening in the US, and we are terrified.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Nikki.
Yes. Are you scared if Trump wins? Are you scared for your safety, or I have a feeling they will go to persecute the left, or
I worry about the same thing, Nikki. And in fact, earlier this week on the bonus show, in the voicemail segment, a viewer called in and asked what preparations are being made. And without getting into a lot of detail, we have established duplicate studios. They look exactly the same, but they are in various bunkers in different parts of the United States, such that we would be able to retreat to other studios if it became necessary. There are actually some progressive hosts who they don't even live where they like if you look at their Wikipedia pages and their Facebook profiles, it says they live in one place. They really live somewhere completely different. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, Nikki, from the standpoint of safety.
Yes, I can understand.
Yeah.
It's just so, I don't have words, really.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this: from Germany, Do you see the U.S. and do you pity us? Do you laugh at us? What is the primary emotion?
I feel sorry. I really feel sorry for all the people who might lose their health insurance and who can't pay their rent. And it's terrible, really. I just feel sorry. And I'm not laughing about the US. I laugh at Trump, yes. He's a laughing stock. But he's also very dangerous.
Right.
So we have this history with Hitler, and it's just so much the same. And it's terrifying. I thought this would never happen again, but people just don't learn.
Well, Nikki, let's hope for the best and check in after the election, okay?
Yes.
All right.
I wish you all the best. Good luck.
Thank you. There's Nikki from Germany. Hope to be back in Germany very, very soon. It would be great to do it. Let's go to Mackenzie. Mackenzie from it's cut off. Mackenzie from somewhere. Hold on a second. Mackenzie, you are unmuted. Mackenzie from is it California? Mackenzie is self-muted. All right, I'm going to have to turn the mute back on. That failed. That did not work. Let's go to Josephine. Josephine, what's going on with you today? Where are you calling in from?
Hi, David.
Yes.
Hi, Josephine from Australia calling.
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm okay. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
That's great considering all the information that's going in. Yeah, I have my question. I suppose you could call it a question.
Yeah.
Per se, is with regard to Eric Trump.
Yes.
And his, I'll call it a spot on the, hang on, you there?
Oh, I'm here, Josephine.
Yeah. His spot on broadcast news, and you commented on that segment today, or was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was a couple of days ago. Eric Trump was on it was actually over the weekend that Eric Trump was on ABC with Jonathan Karl, and he made very little sense.
Oh, sense? No, I'm actually going to say, like, putting that aside.
Yeah.
Putting all the crap that came out of his mouth aside, the fact that he actually has a voice. Like, who is he? He's known. He's Donald Trump's son, and he is commenting on the state of affairs in America. Yeah. And also, as you said, it is Kafkaesque.
Yes, it was Kafkaesque. Yes.
And not only that, it's nepotism. The height of nepotism turned up to 11. Right?
Yeah.
Because he shouldn't. Why is he speaking? I mean, okay, fine. An advisor from the White House that has no relationship, or obviously they all have bias. Maybe Bill Barr. Or, fine, okay, he can lie and talk as Donald Trump does, but not his son Eric.
Right. Now, Josephine, did you have any question you wanted to run by me on this topic? I agree with you 110%.
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to ask you, I suppose, do you think that the majority of people can see the problem with this?
With Eric Trump being on TV?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's America is not a family business.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, do you understand what I mean by that?
I think many people, Josephine, I love it. I think many people do see the problem with it, and many people don't, and they don't care. So I think that unfortunately, you've got a mix of everything here in the United States, and we're going to have to do our best to remove it. But Josephine, I got to move on because I do have a lot of people who want to very, very strongly get on. Let's go next to Lamar from London. Lamar from London, you're on. What's going on?
Hey, thanks for picking up.
My pleasure.
So I've seen your video with Jesse Lee Peterson.
Yeah.
Great job on that.
Thank you.
It was really entertaining. I was wondering, we seem to be on the same page with conservatives like Candace Owens and kind of playing identity politics.
Mm-hmm.
And they like to kind of make it out as if that's something that people on the left like to do. I'm really curious as to like whether you would interview Candace Owens or other like conservatives like Larry Elder and so forth and kind of confront them on that, because that is something that...
I mean, listen, Candace Owens, we've had, there's been so much back and forth with Candace Owens. As far as I knew, I was supposed to be on a panel with her at Politicon a couple years ago, and then she said she was never even asked and was never even going to Politicon. At this point, I don't know that she would be willing to talk to me, but I would gladly host her on my program or appear on hers. Larry Elder, okay, maybe. I don't know that Larry Elder is the most relevant to my audience, but I have no opposition in principle to it.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. I just think that would be really interesting, because I think her and even Charlie Kirk, for instance, they change their arguments quite frequently, and they're not very consistent.
No,
but their fan bases think that they're the most intelligent people in the world.
Yeah.
So it would be really interesting to hear someone.
I was actually thinking the other day, I saw a totally delusional clip of Charlie Kirk yelling about how, basically your life depends on voting Trump. It was crazy. But I was wondering, like, what happens to Charlie Kirk if Trump loses,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was found out the other day for like having this fake group with Turning Point or something like that. I think I read about it, and they were kind of swaying people not to vote or something like that.
They were astroturfing somewhere. Yeah, who can even keep up? It's hard to even know.
Yeah.
Hey, Lamar, real quick question. How can you clarify for me, in British English, as you speak proper British English, how do you pronounce that the virus, we call it's spelled COVID. How do you pronounce that?
COVID.
Oh, you do? Oh, wow. Okay, my God. All right, I guess people are right. All right. Well, yeah. Lamar, on that note, I appreciate the phone call. I've been duly humbled, and I appreciate you pronouncing that for me.
Thanks. Great talking to you.
All right. There is Lamar from London. Very, very exciting. I see Mackenzie is very aggressively saying that they were not given a full opportunity. You are on right now, Mackenzie. Did you have something you wanted to talk about?
Yes, I apologize. I had the thing deafened. So.
All right, very good. What can we do for you?
So I just had a question. I'm not sure if you talked about this before or if it's like important to you. I'm Jewish too, and I was just wondering what your observation is on anti-Semitism on the left.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been interested in like the online left world for a while, and I feel a little bit shut out because it just seems like people are denying that Jews are also indigenous to the region, and saying that they dislike Zionists, but the vast majority of American Jews overall are Zionist. And I feel like there are a lot of double standards with, saying Israel is not real, but then also, not having a problem with like Lebanon or Egypt when it was created via the British Mandate too.
Yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, these are all different issues. So there's the geopolitical in terms of one's opinion about Middle East politics. That's one thing. I think, and there are very healthy debates to be had there. I think, we're very familiar with how right-wing anti-Semitism manifests in the United States, and people on the left tend to understand that and sort of call it out. There is unfortunately left-wing anti-Semitism as well, which takes on a different tone and tenor. It includes sort of writing off oppression and discrimination against Jewish people, which has been a constant around the world for thousands of years. There is the sort of writing Jews off in the United States as privileged whites, when that completely ignores that basically all European discrimination against Jews over the last 100 years is predicated on the idea that Jews are not indeed considered white. We saw the Women's March stuff where Jewish women were not considered intersectional enough to be part of the leadership of the Women's March. So there's a lot of left-wing anti-Semitism. It's more, I don't want to call it nuanced because that almost makes it sound good. It's more hidden. And I think that's where I would sort of put it. But yes, left and right-wing anti-Semitism both exist. They are different things. They look different. And I've been talking about it for years.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, I just feel like it's becoming more of a bigger issue. So like with the DSA, like it's a fairly large socialist left-wing organization.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they also have been like writing off, anti-Semitism or like ignoring, Jewish perspectives on Israel, for example. And
that I know less about, because as someone who is not a socialist, I don't really I don't observe DSA or know too much about it. So I wouldn't be able to really say anything about that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, thank you. And I also just wanted to share my opinion on the Jamie Harrison versus Lindsey Graham race too, because I am from South Carolina.
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of I think Lindsey Graham's going to win 90% of the chance. I think it's going to happen. I just feel like there's not enough long-term hype about Jamie Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, if you force me to bet, I bet Graham wins, but I think it'll be close enough that that Jamie Harrison certainly has a shot, and it would be amazing to defeat Lindsey Graham.
I totally agree. Yeah.
All right, Mackenzie, great to hear from Mackenzie from South Carolina. That is all the time I have today. So if people are still holding, I grovel at your feet that I will be unable to get to any more today. But there will be streams where there may be opportunities to call in. We will go to a break on the podcast, the TV show, and the radio show, and be back with plenty more momentarily.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, let's get into some perfect audience questions for the week. Very election relevant. The first one is, David, can you explain, is the Electoral College good or bad? Because I hear different people saying different things. Well, it should come as no surprise that different people have different opinions about the Electoral College. But in order to answer the question, is the Electoral College good or bad, you have to first understand what the point of the Electoral College is. And number two, what one considers good or bad may depend on where they sit politically. So let's kind of build up our understanding of this. In the United States, if 100 million people vote, 55 million vote for one candidate, 45 million vote for another candidate, it is not guaranteed that the one with the 55 million votes won. Why is that? Because we don't have a national popular vote. We have an electoral college system where each state is worth a certain number of votes or points, as they were. The first to get to 270 points or electoral votes wins. So you could win some states by crazy huge popular vote margins, win the popular vote, but only have 265 electoral votes. A different candidate could have fewer total votes, but win enough electoral votes to win. And in fact, that is what happened in the year 2000 with George W. Bush and Al Gore. And it is what happened did it happen in 2004? It obviously happened recently with Donald Trump in 2016. So what we see is that the Electoral College gives disproportionately more or less power to certain states in deciding the outcome of the election. And by virtue of doing that, the voters in those states have relatively more or less power in total, because a vote in California is not equally likely to decide the outcome as is a vote in, for example, Pennsylvania or Florida. Good. Why do we have this system? Initially, the idea of the Electoral College was, listen, if we have a national popular vote, candidates will spend all their time in the most populated areas, and California and New York will decide the election. That's where candidates will go, and they will ignore the small and rural states. Well, all you've really done with the Electoral College system is change that around so that now the states that decide the election are a handful of so-called battleground states, including, but not limited to, Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Arizona, etc. So in particular, in 2020, listen, I don't need the candidate coming to where I am. We have enough media. We have enough internet where I can make a completely informed decision. I don't care if the candidate never goes on the campaign trail at all, quite frankly, if I can understand policy differences and sort of understand who the candidates are. So I do believe that the Electoral College is outdated, first and foremost. I do believe the Electoral College has created the opposite of the problem they wanted to solve by basically making it so candidates are ignoring the very populated areas. But most importantly, when you say, is it good or bad, what I go to is whether the Electoral College better reflects the will of the people than a national popular vote. And the answer is no. More than 2 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than for Donald Trump in 2016. Now, you could say, well, if it was a national popular vote, the election would have been run differently. Run it differently then as a candidate, fine. But way more people wanted Hillary, and yet Donald Trump is president. And fundamentally, the Electoral College system is one of the many systems that gives a structural advantage to Republicans. It is Republicans who have benefited from having their candidate win despite losing the popular vote multiple times now. It is Republicans who benefit from the sort of baseline reality that conservatives are more likely to live in rural areas than are liberals merely because of preferences, and our system disproportionately gives power to rural states when it comes to the Electoral College, and importantly, in the Senate. The Senate is another way in which our government is stacked against the left. Each state gets 2 senators. The highest population states tend to be blue-leaning states, left-leaning states. And so you have a situation, I'm thinking back to the election, where something like the senators representing only 17% of the population have half of the votes in the Senate. That's crazy. The Senate is fundamentally undemocratic. So to step back, I do believe the Electoral College is a negative influence on the will of the people being expressed in who becomes president of the United States. I do believe that it should be changed. And when you look at some of the data, the 10 least populated states plus DC have a population that's 3% of the country, and they have almost 7% of the electors. They are more than 2x overrepresented. And we can slice and dice it in other ways to give these kind of notable examples, but I believe the Electoral College has to go. I think it is a bad influence on the United States system of picking presidents. If you disagree with me, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Hey, David, at this point in time, what can change the presidential race? So I'm going to answer this question without weighing in on whether the race is over, because it doesn't. We've talked about the poll. The national polls look very good for Biden, but Biden is not doing quite as well in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania compared to where Hillary was at this point 4 years ago. Whatever each of us believes to be the situation right now, the question is what could dramatically change it? I think that at this point in time, we really are looking only at big issues, like a health issue for one of the candidates. If one of the candidates were to be truly very ill, where it would be unclear that they would make it to the inauguration, I do think that that would change how people decide to vote. Major credible crime allegation against one of the candidates. I don't mean Trump at rallies saying Biden and Obama spied on me and they should be indicted. That's not what I mean by a major credible. Trump hasn't even said what crime was committed, supposedly, when he says that. But like a real story that takes over about, wow, Trump or Biden accused of X, Y, or Z. Remember, many of the sexual assault allegations against against Trump were certainly crimes at the time. And you can talk about statute of limitations or whatever. Didn't make a difference in 2016. I don't believe the third debate, if it happens, will change anything. Again, unless there's a major failure by someone, a medical event during the debate, if Trump starts yelling the N-word during the debate, I do think it would have an impact. I know his core base might not care, but there are people who are just slightly over on the Trump side who, if Trump starts calling black people the N-word, for example, or Jews the K word or something, I think that would have an impact. Some people have written to me and said, David, don't you think Joe Biden being unwilling to say whether or not he will pack the court, don't you think that that's hurting him? I don't, and I'll tell you why. On balance, you might say, if a candidate clearly isn't answering a question directly, it hurts them. And so there may be some way in which some people aren't pleased that Joe Biden is not willing to say whether he will or won't pack the court. There's a different side to the strategy, which is by not saying it, he maintains it as a threat to Republicans, which may be useful. Whereas if Biden says, I won't do it, they're off the hook. And if Biden says, I will do it, then they just campaign against Biden because Biden says he will pack the court. Now, my belief is Biden will not pack the court. You can go back and see Biden's previous statements about packing the court. I don't think Biden has any intention of packing the court, much to the dismay of many people on the left. But it's not so clear to me that Biden not answering that question is really doing damage. I certainly don't think it's going to change the outcome of the election. So this close to the election, particularly with so many people having already voted, it's very difficult to change what the outcome is going to be. Now, the outcome ultimately may not reflect the will of the people because of foul play with absentee ballots, because of the use of lawyers and courts to try to stop the counting of said ballots, so on and so. But that's something that is not about events on the campaign trail. And if you take Alan Lichtman's approach to predicting elections, which is a qualitative approach, it's less about this happened in a debate. It's more circumstantial what's going on in the country. He would argue that the cake is already baked. He happens to think Biden will win. He may be right. He may be wrong. Biden may win the popular vote and yet not win electorally, in which case, did Alan Lichtman get it right or not? We could debate that. But the idea would be this late in the game, only a candidate becoming incapacitated would change the situation, because with a qualitative analysis, the circumstances in the country over the last 4 years are what they are, and that is what will determine the outcome. We will have to wait and see, and we won't have to wait that much longer. David, for all the talk about voter turnout, will it actually happen this year? This is a great question because every election, someone says it's turnout. It's a turnout election. In a mathematical sense, when 45% of the country doesn't vote in presidential elections, turnout alone can flip an election. Sure. It's not about convincing people about one candidate over another. It's about, if nearly half the country doesn't vote, finding people who agree with you and getting them to vote is a potentially mathematically viable strategy. Does it ever actually happen? Well, it's often underwhelming, particularly when candidates have counted on young voters who love me are going to rocket me to victory. Bernie is an example, and then it doesn't happen. So it doesn't always happen. However, we have a few interesting data points. In 2018, the midterm had a much higher turnout than the 2014 midterm and the 2010 midterm. If you see that as an indicator for what will happen in 2020 as far as turnout goes, it suggests big turnout in 2020. The other side of this is, if you look at how many people have already voted as of today, it's millions and millions when it was very few at this point in 2016. Some are saying that means turnout is off the wall and it's probably bad for Trump. The counter is multiple states, most states, half the states, I don't know the number, but because of the pandemic, many, many states have expanded and encouraged absentee ballots and absentee voting. So it's not that naturally, without anything being different, the number of early votes have exploded by orders of magnitude. They've exploded, but because we have a pandemic and states have actually gone out of their way like they've never done before to get people to vote absentee or to vote early. So I don't think that's really the sign. I think we're going to have to wait and see. Trump has been repeating the left has no enthusiasm. That seems very wrong. And if you look even from the past weekend at early voting lines, people waiting in line 12 hours to vote. Part of the reason they're waiting that long is, of course, early voting has been hampered, particularly in Democratic areas. We've seen reductions in polling places and people thrown off voter rolls. So they get there and they're not on the list. And okay, fine. But there does not seem to be a shortage of enthusiasm. And in the end, it is really hard to get people who aren't interested in politics to vote. It's tough. It really is tough. Nearly half the country isn't interested enough to have voted in 2016. That's a very difficult situation. It's an opportunity if you can activate people, but it is a very, very difficult thing to do. That's where my head is right now. I do think we will see record turnout, partially because the population is bigger than ever, but I believe there is enthusiasm. Is it going to be a blow out of the water record turnout? I think it'll be record turnout. I don't think it'll be. One guy called and said he expects, I think he said 160 million votes. I don't think we're going to get 160 million votes at all. If we do, I will eat my hat. I don't have any hats, so I can make that promise. But I do think we will see record turnout. We have a great bonus show planned for you today. Get instant access, by signing up at joinpacman.com.